With the passing of Gene Wilder, we here at Your Parents' Attic thought it would be a good thing to do to have a special episode about Gene Wilder because of the connection to maybe a lot of your childhoods, but also connection to mine. And Greg here is
I love him.
It's great. It was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, a movie that was made obviously outside the time period of the podcast and what we talk about on the show, but the movie made in 1971 has stretched long after its initial release to the childhood of myself in the late 80s and early 90s, to people in the 2000s, and even stretches now until kids now who watch the movie and recognize Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka. It still happened when Gene Wilder would be out in public. So he passed away.
It's a timeless film. It's really weird. It just operates out of, I mean, you don't even think about how long ago did that movie get made. It's just it's so of itself, which I know that doesn't make any sense. But I mean, he was the glue that put that together. So I mean, you can't even look at it as, oh well, that was before my time, or that was before I was a kid. It's part of, if you were born in the last 40 years, it's a part of your childhood. That's just,
It was and we're talking about this because Gene Wilder passed away here on August 29th, 2016, the age of 83 years old.
83.
And here, before we get into Willy Wonka, he didn't really make that many appearances, even in the 2000s, he made a couple, but
I remember him being on some sitcom like Will and Grace or something really stupid like that.
He turned to writing a lot, writing. He wrote a memoir. He wrote some stories, collection of stories, but he really stepped away from acting because he felt like, the quality of movies nowadays just do not match up to part of what he, was a part of back in the 60s and also the in the 70s.
I wonder what he thought about the Ghostbusters remake.
Probably terrible. He was not a fan of the Willy Wonka remake.
Who was?
Nah.
Terrible people?
Yes. So he voiced about it, and just last year I watched the interview with him, kind of like a inside the actor's studio kind of field interview, and he was very vocal about not liking, where entertainment was and comedy, especially nowadays. And it's easy for a guy like Gene Wilder, who has a name that could be in any movie, and make a ton of money, go through the motions, and make an appearance and do it for the money. But he believes in the art of entertainment, the art of acting. That hey, I'm not going to set my standards low with just to get paid and have money and make an appearance. He just stepped away completely from doing that.
Well, and to take it a step further, think about how easy it would have been. You somehow get Gene Wilder to say, "Sure, I'll be in your movie for 2 minutes."
Yeah,
and you could even say to him, "Do whatever you want." Like, this is the situation the character you're playing is going to be in. Do whatever you want. Make your magic happen in this film. And he still wouldn't do that.
It's refreshing because you see a lot of people now who are past their time and
cough Tom Hanks.
Oh no, do not ever rip on Tom Hanks on this podcast. Ever.
Sully.
Get out.
Sully.
Get out. Right now. But Willy Wonka, back to Willy Wonka, was just a movie that was on constant rotation with the other classics of the Moore family. And it just was a movie you could watch at any time of day and be hooked into it. And you've seen it 1,000 times, but you just had to watch till the end. You just had to watch. And, it's one of those movies where when you're a kid, you hear it and you understand the basic premise of the movie. Mm-hmm. But when you're an adult, you comprehend what he's saying, his quick wit and his lines and the Oompa Loompa songs. Like, you get like, oh, okay, now I get it. And it's just a movie that will always stand the test of time when it comes to connecting with that current generation of people in that decade or time frame.
Yeah. Well, and kind of going off that, there's a lot of weird. I mean, it's almost. I can't really make this reference because I have no real familiarity with him. But when people explain to me, like, the Toy Story films or Pixar films, and they say, yeah, it's a kid's movie, but there's a lot of really subtle stuff in there for grown-ups.
Yeah.
Like, there's things there for the grown-ups to catch that the kids will completely miss. That's Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look back and look at the weird things that Willy Wonka says in that movie, just kind of as an aside or kind of mumbling stuff under his breath at points, it's really, like, dark, weird kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That kids just go, I don't know what that means. Well, Oompa Loompas, snozberries, whatever. But that character was him. I mean, Gene Wilder did a lot of really, really great stuff and was in a lot of legendary films. But Willy Wonka, I mean, he is Willy Wonka.
Absolutely.
And it's really amazing that I don't know that I can think of another actor that was so intertwined with the character that they played to the point where you almost can't imagine how they couldn't be that character in real life. Now, obviously, he didn't own a chocolate factory or anything like that, but
maybe he
I can't imagine that kind of smart wit wasn't Gene Wilder.
It was, and he's a guy that has been so many movies, excellent movies through his time, that you hear about, like, actors that have a character tied to that person forever, and usually it's an actor that maybe isn't as prominent as Gene Wilder, but Gene Wilder played so many key roles but the one thing that people know him by, maybe more than others, especially when people our age, is the Willy Wonka. Like, hey, there's Willy Wonka, and Young Frankenstein, Silver Streak, Stir Crazy, Blazing Saddles.
Blazing Saddles, I think Blazing Saddles might have been the first R-rated movie that I saw with my parents, or that I watched with them. And it's possibly, to me, the most perfect comedy I've ever seen, because it takes these really heavy subjects, and it's like, hey, America in the 1800s was kind of a giant garbage fire. These people are all terrible. And they made it was so progressive for what it was. And I mean, the cast, we could just talk about how great Gene Wilder is in that film and not do that film any disservice. But he made that film so much better. Wow. It's just, and that's ignoring all the movies he made with Richard Pryor, which, I mean, you brought up Silver Streak and Stir Crazy. I'm going to swear, holy shit, Stir Crazy. See No Evil, Hear No Evil. Just, wow. If there was ever a comedic pairing that worked to the point where you can't, again, kind of like you can't imagine Gene Wilder not as Willy Wonka, or Willy Wonka not as Gene Wilder. I think of Richard Pryor and I think of Gene Wilder.
Yeah.
I think of Gene Wilder and I try to crowbar him out of Willy Wonka, and all I can think of is Richard Pryor or Cleavon Little. I mean, I don't know. There just has to be this weird bookend, I guess. But Blazing Saddles, wow. And Mel Brooks. I'm sure at some point Mel Brooks will die, and I'll just not leave my apartment for a week because I'll just watch all the Mel Brooks movies I own. Talk about somebody who could write for Wilder. Or if maybe he didn't. Maybe that was just Gene Wilder going in there and going, okay, let's do it like this.
It was a lot of great movies, and connected with our generation, especially with Willy Wonka, and we tried to redo it. Just can't redo something that is done perfectly.
Yeah, and you almost can't be mad to a point. You can almost not be mad at them for trying to remake it.
Just greedy.
Well, okay, but it's Tim Burton, so if you think about the concept of that film, Tim Burton is kind of the only person that I could imagine pulling it off, and he didn't. I don't know about Johnny Depp, But Tim Burton, like if they're gonna remake Willy Wonka, yeah, I guess Tim Burton could do it. But that's one of those movies that I almost look at it like Back to the Future or something like that, where it's this legendary film that you could try to do something with it, but you're never going to kill what the original was. And I almost wonder if Gene Wilder wouldn't have been Willy Wonka in the first place if it would have been what it was.
It's amazing that the film was not a big success right off the bat, and it was the 53rd highest grossing film of the year in the U.S.
Jeez.
Just earning over $2.1 million that weekend, opening weekend. And the film, Quaker Oats had a share of the film.
Really?
And they sold it to Warner Brothers for $500,000 in 1977.
Wow.
So it's one of those cult classes, like, kind of caught on after the fact.
Yeah, it's like Rocky Horror,
which caught on in the 80s.
Yeah.
In our, when we first were born, and it just, momentum. It's one of those movies to where, you look back and maybe you should have gotten a lot more love.
Oh, without a doubt.
Early on. So yeah, that was 1971, Willy Wonka. So Gene Wilder passes away today. We figured we would release this special Gene Wilder little retrospect about his career and what he meant to us for our childhood. Because, like I said, Willy Wonka was a staple movie in the household. Just play on repeat on the old VHS, tape, and then whenever it's on TV, you stop what you were doing and you watched Willy Wonka. So, really quick, what was your favorite Willy Wonka quote?
I mean, it has to be the boat little song thing. Yeah. There's no earthly way of knowing. Yeah. It has to be that. Although, like, I'm sitting here and I've been the whole time we've been recording, and actually for a little bit before. I can remember him saying something right before he blows into the little whistle, and the Oompa Loompas, I want to say, had to go take Violet away. And he said something, and it was so... It's kind of what I was getting at before, where it's this really dark, mean-spirited, under-the-breath aside, and I can't remember for the life of me what it was.
All right, there's so many, but
there really is.
There's a ton of these little quips and witty remarks sprinkled through the movie. And like I said, you don't really kind of fully understand it until you're an adult.
Yeah.
And as a kid, you're like, oh, he's just saying that, but you don't get the full context and just how dark that movie is. But he's just
that's the thing that they ruined about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the remake. They made it so weird that you couldn't have that kind of darkness in it. Like, you can't not realize. I mean, the charm of Willy Wonka is he's not a good person. Like, he's not a philanthropist. He's not somebody who's like, I love kids, let's have fun with kids. He's this really messed up guy that has a chocolate factory that understands his mortality.
But he's so likable, and everybody that watches the movie likes the guy, but like, he is screwed up guy.
Yeah.
He is a chocolate factory with Oompa Loompas that bring little kids to his place, and then he offs them off one by one.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like 10 Little Indians. I mean, at some point you could argue, he's not directly killing these kids, but it's almost like a game of mousetrap.
Like, he knows it's going to happen.
Yeah, he's like, yep, that one, the fat German kid. He's not going to be able to resist the Yoo-Hoo River.
Mike TV is going to want to be on TV.
What a piece of garbage Mike TV was, by the way.
Crap.
Yeah, they all were. I mean, they were no Veruca Salt.
No, she was awful.
She was the worst.
Jeez.
Great band, terrible girl.
All right, so this episode is dedicated to Gene Wilder and especially Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
He's with Gilda now. I mean, that's the one thing that it's weird. There's this thing about a couple different comedians in the last 30 years where their spouse died and they kind of just went, okay, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Gene Wilder, once Gilda Radner died, he didn't really do much, if anything. I mean, like you said in the beginning, there was every once in a while he'd turn up in something. Rick Moranis is another one. Rick Moranis essentially retired from acting when his wife died.
Yeah.
He just went, no, I'm done. And it's really weird how we look at them as these comedic icons, and you know, they're just like, nah. Once they were gone, I'm kind of done. So I mean, if you believe in that sort of spirituality, he's probably somewhere killing. You know, like him and Pryor are up somewhere, just knocking them dead.
Well,
and that's I'm sure comforting to somebody.
So, like I said, this episode is dedicated to Gene Wilder, and we'll see you on Friday for our regularly scheduled podcast. Make sure to like us on iTunes and Stitcher and Libsyn, and make sure to download and subscribe, leave a comment, and rate us. We're also on Facebook and Twitter.
Tell us your favorite line from. Tell us on Facebook your favorite line from Willy Wonka.
Yes.
Or any other Gene Wilder movie. I mean, come on. There's lots of them. There's lots of great lines. Let's hear what you got.
The suspense is terrifying. Hope it lasts.
Hope it lasts.